My name is Jessie Ace. I'm part of a group of enabled warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. So we push the limits. We are mentally strong, and we can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jessie Ace, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. Enabled Warriors. She's a 20-something-year-old living in Austin, Texas, with her fiance, soon-to-be husband, and beloved dog, Biscuit. Oh, that's such a cute name. Previously, she worked in marketing at a tech company, which she just literally recently designed as of yesterday, to pursue her passion to advocate for functional medicine and holistic healing. In 2012, her life changed forever as she was diagnosed with Graves' disease, a form of hypothyroidism. Without the knowledge of how to be an empowered patient, she lived for 7 years feeling sick and weary. Finally, after a really kind of bad relapse that left her bedridden, she searched for answers in podcasts and books and blogs and publications and new doctors and therapy and other practitioners. And this is when she found a way to take her health into her own hands. The journey of healing is what inspired the blog. Her goal is to help people advocate for their own health and bodies, learning to listen to their bodies, and ultimately understanding that feeling good is possible. Enabled Warriors, please help me in welcoming today's guest, Faith Abbott, soon to be Ashenden.
Thank you for that introduction and for having me. Hey.
How are you doing today? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, excellent. I'm doing great, thank you. Great. Thanks so much for being here today. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. Yeah.
So can I get straight in by asking you what Graves' disease actually is? Because I've not actually heard of that before. And how does it really affect you day to day?
Sure. So Graves' disease is an autoimmune disease which causes hyperthyroidism. So a lot of people are a little bit more familiar with hypothyroidism or maybe Hashimoto's, which is kind of like the opposite autoimmune disease of Graves. So yeah, essentially the main symptoms are that all of your rhythms in your body kind of like speed up, if you will. So you're talking about like a lot of adrenaline. You're talking about not being able to regulate body temperature. So you're really hot and sweaty all the time. Your metabolism speeds up, so you lose a lot of weight. You also deal with a lot of, because of like the adrenaline, you deal with a lot of sort of mental problems that come along with it, in the sense that a lot of anxiety comes with it, which is the really difficult part, I think, from what I've heard and from my experience, because it's really hard to isolate anxiety as a symptom when you're trying to diagnose someone. And that's the one that I feel like you just kind of feel the most. So, but other than that, other kind of thyroid issues are like hair loss, food kind of like moves straight through you. The gut doesn't work really well. I also experienced a lot of nausea with it. So those are like the main symptoms if you were to kind of like look through a medical diagnosis of what to look for Graves' disease.
Wow, that's amazing to live with that every day. I mean, that must be so frustrating. Do you find it quite frustrating when you're around other people? Do they kind of forget if they are, do they kind of forget that you have that?
So what happens with Graves' disease is you have to essentially, you don't have to, but most people do a treatment. There are 2 treatment options out there, and it's radioactive iodine, which is just like a pill that you take that's full of radioactive iodine, and your thyroid absorbs it and then it dies.
Wow.
Or you can do surgery, which is like, so one, the organ is still there, but essentially is functioning as a very, very hypothyroid, and the other one is just removing the thyroid altogether. So most people do one of those 2 things. You can manage it without, some people can manage it without medication. It's quite difficult and it doesn't work for everyone. So I did the radioactive iodine treatment
Mm.
shortly after being diagnosed. And now my thyroid functions basically just really, really hypothyroid. So I have to take a synthetic thyroid hormone to kind of get me back to like a normal baseline. But that in itself has its own issues, but if it's managed properly, it's much more doable than, living in that with all the symptoms of Graves' disease.
Yeah, definitely. That must have been quite scary having that treatment put on you for the first time and kind of going, oh gosh, I've got to take radioactive. Like what? Like, like that's insane. God.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was really. Like they were just like, you can either get radioactive iodine or you can have surgery, and I didn't know what, like I was in college and I thought, well, I really didn't want to graduate late, and I wanted to not let it set me back more than it had. So in my mind, radioactive iodine was sort of a less invasive way to address it, because to me, surgery sounded, I'd never had surgery besides getting my wisdom teeth taken out. And I was like, I don't want to have to deal with the recovery time. So I just kind of went with it. But I didn't really understand the implications of it until I started to kind of experience what the treatment was supposed to do. And that was really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. How old were you when you started getting symptoms and things, when you started to notice something that was going wrong?
So I believe that I was undiagnosed for about a year. The first symptom that was really obvious was the weight loss, because I was a freshman in college initially and I gained some weight. And then come sophomore year or second year of university, I started to lose it. And then my third year of university, I lost like 20, 25 pounds, like without even trying. And I was really, really, really thin. I lost all my muscle. And I started to then like experience a lot of anxiety, which is something that I had never really dealt with beyond like, the typical anxiety before a test or something like that. And so I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I just remember sitting in class thinking like, am I just like crazy now, because you feel like you're losing your mind. And then, I started like sweating a lot and like just wouldn't be able to control my adrenaline. It's like something like anything that triggered adrenaline, it just like kept going and going and going and going, and I'd have to like leave the classroom. So there's like all these weird symptoms that I didn't know how to like address. And I would go to doctors finally, and they just were like, you have anxiety, like, because those are, losing weight or sweating and adrenaline, of course, is all symptom of anxiety. So they were like, just relax, like take a lighter course load, like take some vitamins. And like that's kind of how it was for a year, until finally, the symptoms just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and we got to the bottom of it.
Amazing. But in a way, it's kind of a good thing that it kind of did get worse and worse, because then at least you kind of, like you say, got to the bottom of what it was.
Yeah, so I had to well, it's interesting because I have high cholesterol, but it's because it's genetic. And so I have like extraordinarily high cholesterol, which we struggle to get down even with a medication. And I was at my cardiologist back home, and I remember thinking, oh no, like I haven't been taking my cholesterol medication. She's going to be so mad at me because my cholesterol is going to be so high. And she was like, oh my God, your cholesterol is so low. Like, she's like, we finally did it. We finally like figured it out, the right combination of meds. And I remember thinking like, oh, what a stroke of luck. But then it turns out, because I was, burning fat so quickly in this ridiculous hyper state, actually that was a clue that something was really wrong with my body and that it was Graves' disease. So it was crazy how like that was an indicator. And obviously she was the one who ended up diagnosing it in the end through that, and through my pulse being 181 per minute, which is ridiculously high. So
oh my gosh, how high was your pulse? Sorry,
it was 181 per minute.
Wow, that's fast. That's fast.
Yeah, that's an indicator of all that adrenaline and anxiety. Gosh. I mean, it's just like it's
must
crazy.
have felt so exhausted, because like I know when I kind of get that feeling, and I'm kind of, it's kind of like a panicky sort of feeling, isn't it? It's just like everything's going, and you're like, I get so exhausted after that. So was that a factor as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's so bad for, oops, sorry. It's so bad for your body to be in that constant stress response
Yeah.
state, if you will. And so alongside Graves' disease, all of your other functions are weakening because your body is never really in that rest and digest state, which is where your body really heals. And so alongside all these issues that were happening from my thyroid, all these other functions that need to heal and repair overnight and throughout the day weren't really doing that because I wasn't getting really good sleep, obviously, because my heart was just like racing all night and I wasn't really ever like in a restful state during the day. And so even though I was young, and when you're younger you tend to be more resilient, it was still really affecting other parts of my body, which I feel now, you know, I deal with like the residual effects of that.
Gosh, so how old were you when it all started? So you said freshman in college. So like the people in the UK like me, like what wow, what age is that?
Yeah, no, so I actually believe that it started when I was about like 20 or
Yeah.
19 and 20. I got diagnosed at 21.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it usually autoimmune diseases tend to like start in your early 20s.
Yeah, it's really strange how that happens, isn't it? Because I was diagnosed at 22, so it was all kind of, and I've found so many people as well who were diagnosed around the same time as me. And I was kind of like, this is so weird how we're all diagnosed at the same time.
Yeah, it's how it happens. It is. So yeah.
Yeah. So on your blog, it mentions that you had a couple of relapses. So what was your kind of experience of those? What kind of happened, and how did you recover from it?
Yeah, so um basically after the treatment, it took me like a full year to kind of get back on my feet. I started taking, once my thyroid went from hyper to hypo, I started taking the synthetic thyroid medication. And finally, because the thyroid takes so long to die and then so long to get back up and stabilize. So finally, once it stabilized, I sort of lived from then until, you know, end of 2018, feeling relatively okay. Like I didn't feel great, but I was able to go about my daily life and work out and blah blah blah. I just was a little bit more tired than your average person. And then in 2018, at the very end in December, I had a really stressful month. And what can happen when, you know, your immune system is already kind of compromised is if you have a really, really, really stressful month, it can trigger the onset of anything that's been lying dormant, or a relapse with your autoimmune disease. And that's exactly what happened. So it sort of triggered a few things. It triggered the onset of Epstein-Barr, which I imagine was also lying dormant, just kind of like waiting for me to be releasing tons of adrenaline. It triggered mold poisoning.
Oh,
When
wow.
I say that, I mean that my immune system was obviously compromised. So then coming back to a place that had mold where it previously didn't affect me, then it began to affect me. It triggered, so I had some gut issues that I've been able to kind of live with. It's not great, but it's been livable, but that just became like unbearable. And then my thyroid, most importantly, stopped converting the thyroid medication that I had been converting. So the medication is a T4 hormone, and your body converts it into T3, and my body just stopped doing that. So it all kind of came like crashing down in January, and I was like, oh no, something's wrong. So that's kind of how it all started in a nutshell.
Oh wow, you went through so much. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, it was hard.
Goodness, I think it's incredible that you've now kind of in your terms that you say you've been a sickly patient for 7 years, and now you've decided to become an advocate for other people's health and well-being. So when was it that you kind of decided that I need to change how I'm feeling because I don't want to feel like this anymore?
Well, it was really in the relapse, because I was kind of like, okay, you know, when after I got the radioactive iodine and I finally got on the synthetic hormone, I was like, this is livable, you know, if I do like everything right. I live at maybe like 70% of what I should feel. And then when I relapsed, I realized like, it's not okay. Like clearly I need to be, clearly I can't handle like this kind of stress, and I need to be taking better care of my body. And I really learned in that time, not only that, but how to be an advocate for myself. Because prior to this, I'd go to the doctor and they'd figure out what was wrong with me and I'd get a treatment and they'd send me on my way. But this time, it wasn't that way. I'd go to doctors and time and time again, they would be like, nothing's wrong with you. Like, essentially, like, and I had it said to me so many times, like, this is in your head. So I had this choice, like this crossroad, like, listen to the doctors who were telling me it's in my head, or listen to my body, which is clearly speaking to me as I'm bedridden and I'm clearly like symptomatic in so many ways. So I decided to listen to my own intuition, and I continue to pursue, like I said, podcasts and books and calling doctors who live in different parts of the world. And this is how I was able to access testing that was able to like unravel essentially what was going on. And then from there, I just became really passionate about getting to that root cause and supporting myself so that I never end up, bedridden for like 6 months again. So, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So when you say you had loads of testing done, what kind of tests did they put you through? And was that different to what your doctor was actually doing back home?
Yeah, so like initially I just went to an endocrinologist who manages your thyroid, and the tests that the endocrinologists do aren't very extensive. And prior to this relapse, I never questioned, like, let me see, each individual test, let me critique it and request, I just assumed that the doctor knew what they were doing. They're the specialist.
You do, don't you?
Yeah, but I mean, I would be forgiven for assuming that. But yeah, so I just assumed that. And of course, like, I did 2 or 3 rounds of testing and she was like, nope, like, you're fine. Like, I don't know what to tell you. So then I went to a rheumatologist and she did, so she specializes in autoimmune diseases, and she did just like tons of just tests for autoimmune diseases, and they were all negative. So in a way, it's a good thing, but you get to a point where you're like, I would love for something to be positive so I could feel better.
Yeah.
And then I just started going to like different specialists, different just like internal medicine doctors and all different kinds of doctors, just to, at this point, like, just what the heck, it could be anything. And all of the doctors were like testing for their own respective specialties, and everything was negative. And so once I finally like started doing my own research, I learned about functional medicine, which essentially tests that operate outside of the parameters of traditional Western medicine or insurance. So unfortunately, because of that, it's not covered by insurance. So the problem is that a lot of people can't access this because you're paying out of pocket for all the labs. But I did every single test that my functional medicine doctor had to offer. So getting to the nitty gritty of literally like my cells and the energy of my cells, like everything in my gut, every type of bacteria living in there, neurotransmitters. I mean, I did everything. So it's like root cause. And that's where we got tons of red flags.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, it's such a shame that healthcare varies so much over the world, and there are places in the world where that doesn't even have like specialist departments or anything. I just feel so grateful sometimes to be, to be in the position where we can just go and find these treatments, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in America and the UK, we have 2 examples where the same principle applies, because even with the NHS, functional medicine isn't covered. And it's the same thing with insurance. Like, functional medicine isn't, insurance here in America, it's all covered. And so it's a problem that needs to be addressed, because what happens is people fall through the cracks of the healthcare system just because they can't afford to access it. And when you can't find help anywhere else, you're left just dealing with, just literally living a subpar quality of life, because whoever the powers that be have deemed you not worthy of that treatment. And so, once I realized that this treatment is, I'm not 100% back to normal, but I'm obviously so much better. And once I realized that this treatment gave me my life back, I said, I want to quit my job and help people find a way to access this, because what about all the people who message me and say like, oh, it's great that worked for you, thanks for sharing, but I can't afford it, and it's like, that's not fair. And so that's when I really found this passion, just because I went through that experience of being bedridden, to, you know, finding someone to listen to me and get to the root cause and really help me heal properly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so can you going back to the radioactive iodine that you were taking, what kind of effect did that have on your body and your mind? Because surely it would, like, I can imagine it affected your skin quite a lot.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I developed cystic acne, which, I mean, you know, in the scheme of things, isn't like, it doesn't affect the way I feel physically, but it affected the way I felt mentally. And I always had really great skin. I never, like, through puberty, ever once had a pimple. And I remember feeling like so left out about it, because all my friends were like, yeah, they were like, oh, I have a pimple. And I was like, I never, like, am I not a teenager? And then all of a sudden I'm like into adulthood, and I started getting this cystic acne. And I mean, like, full on cystic acne right here, where, you know, the hormonal portion of your face. And there was nothing I could do about it. Like, I tried everything under the sun. I tried so many treatments, spent so much money and time. I, like, took care of my skin better than, like, any college student you've ever seen, and it looked like I never washed my face. But beyond that, radioactive iodine kind of sucked, if I'm going to be honest. Like, you have to wait for your thyroid to die. So you go from being, like, really, really hyperactive and all the symptoms I described, and then slowly, you feel a hormonal shift to the opposite, which is, you know, that depressive state. Everything moves slowly. So you go from, like, boom, 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 like you're like a little kind of energy pill, to not producing any serotonin. So you're depressed. Your metabolism slows down. All the rhythms slow down. You've got no energy at all. So you're feeling this, like, huge shift in a matter of months, which is pretty intense emotionally, I think, more than physically, if I'm honest, because it's such extreme states. So that was something that they don't prepare you for. I've talked to lots of patients, and the doctors always say, you know, oh, you'll be fine in a few weeks or a month or whatever. And that's completely false. So I would love, like, this message to reach people who maybe are thinking about treatment. It's of course not to discourage them from treatment, because there's always light at the end of the tunnel, but I think it's important to prepare people adequately for the experience that they're going to have to endure, so that they can, you know, emotionally prepare for it. But yeah, the acne was that one thing that just, like, stuck with me once I got better. Just couldn't knock it for a long time until recently.
Wow. Well, your skin looks amazing. Now, for anyone watching on YouTube, by the way, face
Thanks.
looks incredible.
Thank you.
Like,
Thanks.
so, can you let us in to your skincare secrets? Because I know you've written a blog on it, and I did read your blog, and I've looked up quite a few of the products, and I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, I need some of these. But can you tell us your kind of routine, how you keep such, like, beautiful skin?
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, actually, it's just really, for me, simplifying and using all clean products. So before I was sick in January, I never really thought about the products I was putting on my skin. And then I sort of educated myself in this endeavor to do everything I can with my environment to sort of optimize my health. And so I learned that, you know, there are all these toxins in the products that we're putting on our skin, and I had no idea. A lot of them are hidden in ingredients like fragrance or something like that. And so I just said, like, you know what, I'm putting so much on my body, and your body is just, like, drinking up all of that poison. And so I said, I'm just going to quit it with that. I cut out dairy, and I just let my skin breathe. And, like, within 2 weeks of cutting out the dairy, including collagen, and quitting with the toxic products, my skin literally cleared up. And I'm talking about, I did Accutane, retinol, clindamycin, antibiotics, tetracycline. I think that's, maybe I'm making that one up. It's the name of some other medication I took. I did everything that the dermatologist had to offer. If it exists, I tried it. And 2 weeks it took of literally just cutting out dairy. And, you know, I don't even, like, I use apricot oil or rose rose oil at night. Like it's so clean. It's just one ingredient, and it's organic apricots. So, you know, I just try to be as gentle. I don't wear any face makeup. I wear a little bit of bronzer sometimes by a clean brand, where all the ingredients are organic and there are no like additives in it. And collagen, and so there's no expensive or difficult secret.
That's incredible. Like, it's really interesting what you were saying about dairy as well. Cutting out dairy made a huge difference to you.
Yes, and it's funny because, you know, I heard that, like, I don't even remember where, probably a podcast, and I did it, and I was like, are you actually kidding me? Like, I've struggled with this for so many years, and I've spent so much money, and not one doctor was like, you know, just cut out dairy. So I went to my dermatologist and I said, like, hey, by the way, like, I don't know if you noticed, but my skin is like clear now. And she was like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, I cut out dairy. And she was like, oh, weird. You must have been really sensitive to it. And I'm like, this is the problem with our healthcare system. Like, why wouldn't, you know, all the pills that I put in my body really made me sick, and I now suffer from the side effects. But it was as simple as just cutting out, you know, things that were toxic to my body. And the fact that a dermatologist didn't even really know that could fix it is exactly the problem that I want to address.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got this other problem as well, where all these drug companies are pushing their products onto dermatologists and doctors and everybody else, and it's kind of like the doctors are kind of, I don't know, like forgetting that there is an actual person behind these symptoms, you know?
100%. I mean, 100%. And that's the case with pharmaceuticals and, you know, with everything. It's such a big game. There's so much money to be made.
Yeah.
And the problem is that every person is so intricate. And just because they have the same diagnosis as someone else doesn't mean that the root cause is necessarily the same. And it's important to address everyone as an individual and understand their lifestyle, where they've traveled to, their relationships, their emotional, you know, mental health, their jobs, their environment. These are all factors that play a part in someone healing, and you absolutely cannot, and I think people are morally obligated to not just give you a prescription that they would give anyone with the same diagnosis, because ultimately, in my case, and in many cases, it can do a lot more harm than good. So I think it's important.
And sometimes, like you say, it's just a case of switching diet or exercising or doing something like that's completely, you know, open to everyone, really.
Yeah,
it's just not talked about, which is incredible. It's incredibly insane.
Yeah, it is insane is the word I would use to describe it as well.
Absolutely insane. So, talking about pharmaceuticals and prescription drugs and stuff, can you tell me a little bit about Adderall? Because you were on Adderall for quite some time.
Yes.
Can you tell me about with that?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Can you tell me about your experience with that? How did it make you feel? What did it do, kind of thing?
Yeah, so Adderall, or just like amphetamines in general, that game is strong in America. I think it's really, you know, our generation that is dealing with the repercussions of the amphetamines, whereas prior, they had sort of like a negative stigma. We realized at some point, and I'm not sure how this went down in the system, that amphetamines can solve a lot of problems when it comes to kids or students, because, you know, the people who don't really need an amphetamine, it just gives you a lot of energy, and it can kind of mask some of your symptoms, whether they're mental symptoms like anxiety or depression, or whether they're physical symptoms like chronic fatigue or really any type of autoimmune disease. It's kind of like a cure-all, or, you know, that's what people think. So it became prescribed just like so freely. And for me, dealing with all of these issues that I've had from a physical perspective, that was one of the drugs that they really wanted me to take and encouraged me to take. And initially, I really didn't like the idea, because I thought, you know, like maybe it had a bad stigma or something like that. But eventually, in college, I started to take it again, and I loved it, because actually it was helping me make really good grades in school, and who doesn't want that? Yeah. So unfortunately, it was something that really masked my symptoms for a long time. And it causes a lot of side effects once you're done taking it, from a neurotransmitter perspective, just, like you're talking about, it's acting on dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and you're having so much of that every single day. So you're feeling motivated, you're feeling good, you're feeling energetic, you're killing your workouts, you're just like killing it in every sense of the word. And then your sort of like neurochemistry changes. And when you stop taking it, you're super, super depleted. Like, I mean, you don't really get any of it. And so you're in this like difficult position. So for me, once I was kind of like taking control of my health, I was like, well, I'm not certain that this is doing anything good for my body because it's masking my symptoms. So I'm going to stop taking it and just see what happens. And it sucked because no one tells you what's, first of all, going to happen when you stop taking it.
Yeah.
There's no sort of conversation with your doctor like, oh, and by the way, if you decide to stop taking your amphetamines, please consult me, or like a treatment plan or anything like that. And so I just, again, like in attempts to sort of like detox and get to the root of everything, stopped. And I think to this day I still deal with the consequences of taking that for so long. And I've spoken to my doctors, and unfortunately there's just like not a lot of research. So for me, it's a lot of, again, just like making sure that I do everything I can to detox, making sure I do everything I can to set myself up for success mentally with like meditation, and stuff like that. And of course, like eventually you rebuild the ability to build those or produce those neurotransmitters and stuff like that. But you feel your symptoms a lot more. You feel the lack of energy. And you just feel it. You feel it when you don't have dopamine. You feel it when you don't have serotonin. It's hard to remind yourself that you don't have it, and it's just purely like a physiological thing, but you feel it emotionally. So it's something that I feel a lot of people with autoimmune disease in America experience. You just get it like pushed on you as a cure-all, and then you feel like you found a shortcut, and it's not really your fault because you want to continue on with your life and not be bedridden. So it's a difficult thing, and it's unfortunately still very much prescribed to children and people in college and everything here.
That's crazy. Gosh.
Yeah,
it really is crazy.
It's really actually very crazy because I used to work at a company that catered to children, and a lot of times like parents would come to me and they would say, like their child, for example, was acting like a child, as in they were talking during class or they didn't want to do their homework, and they were like, yeah, our school counselor recommended Ritalin or Adderall or Vyvanse, like what do you think? And of course I can't give medical opinions because I'm not a doctor or like a whatever, but like I heard it over and over and over again, and I just wanted to like pull my hair out, because it's like, just like every other parent, they don't really know what they're doing, because if your doctor's telling you that, not only if your doctor's telling you that your child needs it, but your child takes it and all of a sudden they're getting straight A's, they're paying attention in class, they're doing a great job at their sport or whatever, you think, amazing, like we've just done it, like we fixed it, this is like the best drug ever. And you're rewiring the chemistry of your child's brain while they're developing, which is so dangerous. And I can't say enough about how detrimental I personally think Adderall is for people who really don't need it.
That's crazy. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's amazing. Do you think that there is another way other than taking pharmaceuticals in that respect?
When it comes to Adderall, or just pharmaceuticals in general?
For like Ritalin and Adderall, is there like a mindset technique, do you think, that would work better that no one's talking about?
Well, I think for me, for example, or for like people who are actually ill with physical like autoimmune disease or something, I think getting to the root of the autoimmune disease would be what would be the way forward. So instead of saying, oh, you're tired and we don't know what's wrong, here's an amphetamine, like actually, oh, okay, let's dig into it. Oh, you have Graves' antibodies, like obviously in that scenario, I think that restoring someone's natural health and energy and all of that would be better. In the scenario where someone is just not focused, I would say the same thing. Think about the environment the child is in. Are they getting enough sleep? Are they getting proper nutrition? Are they getting proper exercise? Are they sitting in front of a screen all day? Because that alone makes us, you know, when children are growing up, just like sitting in front of a screen all day long, they have like the shortest attention span ever. Their brains don't have to focus in the same way that we did when we had to communicate with other people in real life and go outside and all of that.
Yeah.
I think the other problem is, I don't think that the child is ADD. I think that the child might not be interested in, you know, what they're having to study. And I experienced that.
So much. Like the education system is just so flawed, isn't it? And it's like, it's the same as it was, what, like 50 years ago? And this is the problem. It's
exactly.
Like, it's not individualized to each child. It is a very much blanket approach to everybody.
Yeah, and to say, oh, okay, well, like they're not focusing in their math and science, it's like, well, maybe they don't care about math, you know. And of course, we all have to do things we don't care about because it's important, but to give them an opportunity to have a creative outlet if they're into drawing or whatever it is that they enjoy, to get someone motivated by what they love. I mean, science proves that if you love what you're doing, you're going to be better at it, and you're going to focus on it. And you see this when people become adults and they follow their passions, and then they're super successful, but maybe they weren't successful in school because they didn't care about what, you know. So I think it's taking in all those other variables and optimizing them first. Now, there are some children who I've, you know, dealt with that were literally, whether, you know, some people don't believe in ADD or ADHD, and that's not a debate that I have. However, there are some children who truly can't, like, sit, like they're throwing things and blah, blah, blah. And for them, Ritalin or Adderall calms them down. So I'm not here to say that it can never work, because I would hate, you know, like if it's a situation that's unbearable, I think everybody does what they need to do to survive. But I think before we use that as the first port of call, it would be great to optimize all the other variables. That's my opinion.
Totally agree. And yeah, I mean, like going back to what you were saying about like people not focusing in school and things, it's like if you look at some of the top entrepreneurs, the top business people, most of them dropped out of school. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, and it's because they were just not motivated by the things that they were learning in school.
100%.
It's a huge issue.
That's what I was thinking about actually when I said that. But even just like thinking about myself, like, you know, I'm really interested in this topic. I'm really passionate about it. It's not a topic that was ever taught to me. If this was a class, I'd be like the best student in the class because I love it so much. But, you know, instead I was not learning this. And I was disengaged without Adderall, because Adderall helps you be interested in things that, it doesn't matter what it is. If you take Adderall, it's the most interesting thing you've ever read in your entire life. And so that's so advantageous when you're a student, because you're like, oh, I've got this, you know, anthropology test and I'm memorizing all these things, and I can take an Adderall and actually I have photographic memory and I literally get 105 on this test. Whereas before, without the Adderall, I would like have to study it for like 50 hours and maybe get a B. But Adderall is this superhuman drug where, you know, you're able to like master all this stuff that you wouldn't usually care about, and it makes it easier. I mean, it is a shortcut in a way. Obviously you then deal with like everything else with the repercussions, but introducing that is dangerous because you have that advantage, and then you don't really get to pursue your own passions, because what are you even passionate about when everything excites you when you're on Adderall?
Exactly. And there's the other side of it as well, and I know we're kind of going slightly off topic here, but we'll get back. There is the other topic as well, where actually in the perspective of a school, the school wants those high grades to be able to compete with other schools. So it's kind of like, are they just kind of promoting using it so that they get better test scores?
I mean, there's so many back-end conversations that we can only assume people are having, but we hate to assume that at the same time. Again, I think it's why it's important that parents and people are at least educated on the topic before they make that decision. I think, again, like pharmaceuticals are everybody's own individual choice, and I respect that choice in every scenario, but it's only fair to give people the opportunity to understand the implications of what they're putting in their body before they do it.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah. So going back to you and your blog, Tell us more about the healing feeling, and why did you start it? What do you hope to achieve from it?
Yeah, so I started it because this relapse, and I had never really thought about any of the things that I talk about and think about now in terms of optimizing my environment for health, like what I'm putting in and on my body, the air that I'm breathing, the water that I'm drinking, and even advocating for myself as a patient. And so, when I became aware of all the toxins that are in our environment and all the stress that we have to undergo in every sense of the word, I thought,
Yeah.
there must be a lot of other people out there who are suffering in silence and publicly, and either don't know how to advocate for themselves, aren't able to access the kind of medication they need, and certainly don't understand the implications of, like I said, their environment, the air that they're breathing, what they're putting on their body. And so I said, I really want to not only share my journey of what I'm going through to actually get better and optimize my health, but I want to make people aware of how they can really take control of their own health and listen to their intuition. I want people with chronic illness to understand that the system isn't set up to address chronic illness. And so it's really their own intuition that they have to trust, and to not listen when people tell them that they're crazy, or they're making it up in their head, or they need to stop micro-focusing on it, or whatever it is that, these doctors, unfortunately, are telling a lot of patients. That mindset is really unhealthy, because it makes you believe that this is your destiny to be sick, and there's no hope. Chronic illness means life, end of story. And I want people to know that that's not true.
Oh, it's not true.
No, exactly. But that's the message that
Yeah.
not you, but people believe. And I think until I listened to all these podcasts, and read books about people who healed, I believed it as well. And I just thought, well, I just want to help people, and I'm passionate about it, having gone through it. And so I came up with that healing feeling, and I just started to post the journey, and it started to gain traction because people are in fact suffering with chronic illness all over the world. And the treatment plans and the doctor's opinions, unfortunately, are different all over the world. And even from like one doctor to another doctor in where I live, Austin, Texas, it just goes to show that, doctors' opinions are just that. They're just opinions, and they vary. And all that you really know to be true is what your body is telling you. And so how can we harness that and use that to help our healing process? And that's really how I've honed in on with the content that I'm putting out there.
I think that's incredible, and thank you so much for on behalf of everybody with a chronic illness and an autoimmune disease, for putting that out there, because that's just so inspiring to read. It's amazing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks.
So, okay, last question. So, do you have any advice for anybody listening who has possibly just been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition? They're unsure of when to turn, they're unsure of what to do, worried about and stressing about a new way of life. Like, what would your best piece of advice be to them?
My best piece of advice would be to shop around for your practitioners before you decide on your treatment plan, and before you mentally prepare yourself for a negative season of your life. Because in many scenarios, it doesn't take much. Like, for example, with my cutting out dairy, granted that's just cystic acne, but that's an example of how much your environment affects the way that you feel. So I think maintaining a really hopeful and positive outlook, shopping around for practitioners, making sure you write down your symptoms and the opinions. And once you do find the practitioners who fill you with confidence that they're going to help you get your health back, to stay, what I did is I pulled together like 3 doctors, and I only work with them, because after that you have to prepare yourself that you're going to get 100 different opinions. So when you trust someone, you've got to stick with that, as long as it's working. And you've got to prepare, write down your symptoms, write down your thoughts, like write down everything so that you can optimize your doctor's appointments, and really implement the strategies in a rigid way. So when it comes to dietary restrictions, or like, the amount of water, all these things that you thought might not be effective or might be too simple, simple things and I'm a testament to that, can make a huge impact. So being rigid with yourself and implementing the simple changes that can really have a great impact can do a lot for your confidence in healing, and just like you're actually just optimizing your health in general for your life and your family's life, and educating you guys. So that would sort of be my like advice in a nutshell.
That's awesome. That's awesome advice. And yeah, and that's something that I used to do as well. When I was first diagnosed, I used to literally keep a book, and I kept everything written down, and like how much water I drank and just everything. The thing is, for enabled warriors listening, is to also don't kind of focus so much on that as well. So it's great to write down. It's great to take that to the doctors and you know, have that record. At the same time, I was getting quite obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And that started to really negatively affect my mental health, because I was just so obsessed with like how much I was drinking and how much I was doing, how much sleep I was having, and you know, which pain was where, and I got really obsessed with that.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. You have to, and I think you learn just in the process how to manage emotionally and mentally with, because what happens is you're forced to become hyper aware of your symptoms, because you have to be able to locate when it happened and maybe why it happened, so you can identify a trigger or whatever. And so you become hyper aware, and in doing so, unfortunately, every time you have a symptom, your body goes into that stress response and you feel sicker. Whether or not you have tissue damage, your body just becomes trained to think about, you know, oh my gosh, like let's tense up and put all the energy into this one spot. And that's really, really, really bad for healing. So I think that's a good point that you made. You have to find the line between being aware and, you know, maybe taking 30 minutes before your appointment to pragmatically brain dump your symptoms onto a piece of paper, or if something really big happens, write it down, let it live in the notebook and move on. Because when you're healing, you have to believe that you can heal. Because if your mindset is stuck in like, this is my life, I'm just thinking about my symptoms all the time, that is your life, because your body only knows what your brain says. So you have to maintain that positive mindset and remind your body that healing is possible throughout the process.
Exactly. Okay, so Enabled Warriors, this is the part of the show where we find out a little bit more about the personality of our guests with some super quick secrets. Are you ready for this, Faith?
I'm ready. What are the secrets?
Okay, what is the most inspiring book that you've ever read?
The most inspiring book I've ever read is A Simplified Life by Emily Lay. It literally changed my approach to life in general, helped me simplify everything, and it's really changed my life.
That's incredible. I'm gonna have to look at that one.
It's so good. It's so good. It's literally so good. And it got me on this whole like binge reading about like simplifying my life and minimalism, and I like just changed everything about my life. And to this day, it's just made me such a happier person.
That's awesome. Oh, we've literally in our house just like completely gutted the whole thing so we can get it ready for Airbnb, and it's just been so freeing to get all that stuff. And it's just like, we really don't need as much as we thought we did. It's just like
I agree. It's like and it's less to clean as well. You're like, everything has a place, it goes in this place, and because if my house is cluttered, my mind is cluttered, and I just can't. So
exactly. And it literally takes us 10 minutes to move out now. It's amazing.
That's so nice. I'm not there yet, but I'd love to be in like that kind of position.
Such a good feeling. Anyway, favorite place you've ever visited?
Honestly, Mexico. Well, okay, it's a tie between Mexico and Croatia. Although I go to Mexico like almost every year, so I've been like 20 times. But
really,
I love it. I live in Texas, and so Mexico is like basically like, I mean, it's just like a 2-hour flight. So you're like going to this beautiful beach, but you don't really feel like you're traveling to a different country because it's like right there.
That is so cool. So that's kind of the equivalent of being in Derbyshire and traveling to Skegness.
Yeah. There's like,
well, Skegness is nowhere near as nice as Mexico.
Yeah, no, because in the States, like, you know, you're in your same country, unlike Europe, but like you have to fly so far away to get just to like somewhere else in your country. So Mexico, it's so cool to like live in Texas because you can literally just be like, oh, let's go to Mexico. It's a 2-hour flight. I can wake up and still get there in the morning. And
that is so cool.
Yeah, I love it. But I also really liked Croatia, Hvar. What was it called? Yeah. Yeah, so the beaches are different. I prefer like a sandy beach, but yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, scariest thing that you've ever done?
Skydiving. I hated it. I basically wanted to like,
I hate it.
I did. I wanted to conquer my like worst fear, which actually now is shark diving. I don't think I'll ever want to conquer that. But
Wow.
I was like, I'm super scared of heights, so like I'm just gonna do it. And then like I was like, so many people love this, so I'm sure I'll like get something out of it, and I'll be like, I'm so glad I did it. And I did it, and I was like, this is like literally the worst experience. I hated it so much. I thought I was gonna die every second, and I was like so happy when I got to the ground. I was like, I can say that I did it, but like I 0% understand why anyone would ever do that for fun.
No. Oh wow. Just wow. Just the amount of people that say skydiving is their scariest thing, and I'm kind of like, why did you do that? Like, what's wrong with you? But yeah. Oh my god.
I mean, I think props to people who do things to overcome their fear, because I think that's really bold. But at the same time, like, I did not overcome my fear. Like, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I am still I'm even more scared now of skydiving than I was before. But I think it is like, I guess I know I'm not gonna like splatter on the ground, I suppose, but I think the fear of heights is just kind of I think it's like a reasonable fear to be scared of jumping out of a plane. So
definitely. Oh my gosh. Right. Okay. Where can other warriors find out more about you and what you do?
So they can find me on my website at thathealing-feeling.com or on Instagram at thathealingfeeling. I will be coming out with some freebie content after the wedding, so in October.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've just got so much going on between now and the next few weeks when I get married. But I'm going to be coming out with a lot of little guides based off what I've been talking about today, just kind of really listening to your own intuition and prepping and kind of finding that line between hyper aware of symptoms and obsession and the growth mindset of healing. So I'm going to be doing a lot of that. So if you just go to my website, you can like subscribe and keep aware, and I'll send out the emails whenever I come up with the content.
That's incredible. So enabled warriors listening, please go and sign up to thathealing-feeling.com. Go and get some freebies to help with your mindset. That would be amazing. It's so great to have you on the show today, Faith. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. It's been absolutely incredible, and I think the warriors listening have learned so much. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun chatting.
Thank you so much, and I will catch you soon. And remember, warriors, stay enabled. Thanks, Faith. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
If you want to fight back against your invisible illness and help take the dis out of disability, then join the tribe on Facebook, facebook.com/enabledwarriors. If you love this podcast, click that subscribe button and never miss another episode. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.